Hey class, I'm Julian Castro.
I'm Sophia Segura.
I'm Irvin Soriano.
I'm Christine Tran.
And for our National Academy of Engineering Grand Challenge, we picked Advanced Health Informatics. More specifically, we focused on electronic health records, also known as EHR, which you will hear us mention throughout the podcast. And in simple terms, we wanted to look at how they are being used and managed in different organizations throughout the nation. Moreover, to explain what health informatics is basically the acquisition, management, and use of information in health stored in electronic form. So, in simple terms, it's just an easier and more efficient way of storing health records without having the risk of misplacing or mismanaging them with a physical form rather than electronically. So now our friend Irvin is going to go ahead and talk more about health informatics and about electronic health records and actually what our code is for.
So in general, most records are stored in paper, and there's kind of a difficulty whenever you were at a certain hospital and you want to get your health records from a different one. The problem that we usually find with that is that it takes too long for a hospital to get records from another hospital or so on. So if we had more of a electronic type of way to store these records, it would be much easier. An example would be that if you go to a different state and this hospital you end up for a certain situation doesn't have your records and they would like to get it from a different state, it will be extremely difficult to do it, in the fashion we do it today. So by having electronically stored somewhere, we could get those in minutes. And so that's what our code is gonna do.
On our poster, we have a table on who qualifies for adapting, implementing, or upgrading to a certified EHR, which we found on the ehrfunding.com website. And in the second column, there is a volume threshold, which refers to the minimum volume of patients who need to be added to the EHR by the medical facilitators. And if the medical professional meets the threshold, they qualify for the incentive funding.
All right. Thank you, Christine, for that information. So now we're going to go and get more into the actual code itself. But first, we're actually going to talk about the data itself and what it contains in order to better explain the code afterwards. So first with the data, we have a Excel file that contains 4 different things. First, we have the organization names for each of the providers that we have. Following that, next to the names in the second column, we have the year, followed by the month. And note on that is that not every month of the year is in the data. And then after that is the funding, so the amount of funding they got initially. And then finally is the type of health information we're going to be looking at. Okay, so now let's move on into the code itself. Whenever we first load the code, the first thing that we always do is do a loading function, which in this case is an xlsread. And when we do that, we took 3 things out of it. We took numbers, names, and raw numbers. After that, we took the size of everything to make sure, and we did data validation for this, of course, to make sure the size of all 3 things are the same. Following that, we made 3 different vectors which have names in them and years. The reason we made this is so that whenever we're doing a find function later on, it will be easier to find throughout the whole data. And we also did data validation for all of this. Following that, then we made a menu in order to ask the user if they want to pick a certain year or if they would just rather look at the whole data as a whole for every single year. Data validation was done for that too. So after that, we've made a conditional statement in which we'll either do all years or just a specific year that the user chose. So when that runs now, we asked another question, which is for the user to put numbers for funding. So the numbers that the user is going to input here are all based on the minimum, maximum, and average. The user is either going to pick 3 things. First, they could either pick a minimum, which will set the minimum as a range. So basically what it's going to do, it's going to find every single number in the funding that's greater than that set minimum. And then same thing goes for the maximum. It's going to find everything that's lower than that. Now for the range, you're going to pick two numbers as a vector, in which is going to be, your minimum and your maximum. Following that, there will be an fprintf function that will find the number of locations that meet the criteria. And then if the case is that there are 0 of those locations, the user would be told in a warning that there are no locations, and then it would stop right there. And just in case that you want to have a no limit for the funding, like no funding at all, and just look at everything, you can just set your minimum to the minimum that is displayed and your maximum as the maximum that is displayed. That way you'll get all the data for every single organization. So the second if statement for the year, which was to look at every single year, we'll do the same thing with the minimum, maximum, and range. After that, there is another conditional statement made also with the option of every year or a specific year. Now, with this conditional statement, what's going to happen is that the program is going to grab the row of the location for every single funding that was met and display it in the command window. And next to every single organization, there will be a number. The first thing that's going to display is going to be a 1, and then it will continue like that. So then user will have to input the number of the corresponding location they would like to look at. Once the code finds the locations of the organization you pick, then another question will be asked in the form of a menu, which will have different sort of locations or areas in the medical field. And once you pick that, the code will also find 3 different things. The things that are found will be displayed with an fprintf function. The first one being the total amount of signups for the selected area. The second one will be the total amount of not meaningful uses for the selected area, and the final one being the total amount of meaningful uses for the selected area. Okay, now the second option for the second conditional statement would also be the same thing as the first one. However, just like in the other conditional statement, this one will be doing every single year. Okay, well, that was the code, and now we're going to have Christine here, and she's going to go over the test cases.
If you run our program, the first thing that will pop up is a menu asking if there's a specific time period you want to see. And in our test case, we picked yes, and another menu will come up and it will ask you to choose a time period. And there is the year and the month that is displayed on this menu, and I picked 2012/04. The next menu will ask if you want to enter a restriction, and I picked a minimum, of $20 million, and it outputs 5 options for me to pick from. So I picked number 4, which is NYC Reach, and that led me to another menu asking the area or location that I want to look at, and I selected Community Health Center, and it outputs the amount of signups for the EHR, the meaningful use, and the not meaningful use.
So just to clarify, what Christine just said really quickly, a sign-up does not guarantee the provider will seek assistance, but only that they intend to participate within the EHR, which again is electronic health record. The not meaningful use means that the provider has only adopted or installed an EHR, but the provider has not demonstrated meaningful use. And in contrary to that, the meaningful use means that the provider has installed the EHR system and has indeed done meaningful use. With that being said, Julian's going to jump in and talk to us about our limitations.
So the goal of our program was to separate the organizations with meaningful use apart from organizations with non-meaningful use. The benefit of this is to show which companies are effectively using the federal funding, taking into consideration that this is millions of dollars per organization. Although we have organizations from all 50 states and the territory of Puerto Rico, not every single organization in America that uses a certified EHR is in this data set. Our data has a total of 67 organizations. Another limitation of our program is that our dataset only covers from the years 2012 to 2015. Lastly, our patients' records being confidential is our highest priority. Therefore, the EHR program must be as secure as possible, and EHRs must only be accessed by healthcare professionals and insurance companies. According to EHRfunding.com, over 3 million patient records were affected by hackers between January and June of last year. This is why the secure transfer of electronic health records is essential.
So just to wrap everything up, in conclusion, the goals for our code is to first of all determine which organizations, and these organizations are the ones that handle the electronic health records, which ones of them have best taken advantage of the system itself. We can also find out their funding and how they're managing it. We can see the ratio of sign-ups for the EHR and the meaningful use for the EHR. So we can very well notice the improper allocating of that federal funding. Thank you all for listening. This is our project, and we hope you enjoyed it.